customer acquisition costs have only gone up. They're not going down. Okay, that is something that is a challenge that deep learning can solve for a number of reasons. Deep learning is very, very nuanced. Instead of having 5 or 10 features or variables that you're looking at from a marketing perspective, it can have thousands of inputs.
Hi, I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur.
So, Rex, I think today, listen, it's Decoding AI for Marketing, so it's a forward-looking podcast. We hope for marketers we do that. But I think today it's maybe a little bit sort of a step back into some marketing 101 dynamics that have been neglected. That's why I think we're going to go today.
Marketing 101. Okay. Can't wait.
I mean, here's the thing. I had this conversation. I was at an event in London last week with EY, and I was kind of making this point that AI is sort of not a thing, but it's operating in the background of all the stuff that we're doing. So it might not be a product. Like mobile was a real thing, right? This was a thing that we had. You could tell that was a new channel. It sort of distinguished itself. But AI is in the background. And so I think what we're going to hear today is a guy who's got a lot of the background into really what's going underlying in marketing and sort of improving the systems in a way that's independent from, dare I say, the walled gardens or anybody else. So, and listen, at the end of the day, it is about getting the right message, the right person at the right time. And I think, we've paid a lot of lip service to that. I'm not so sure that we've actually done that over the years. I don't know, Rex, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think what makes this interesting is the approach he's taking is using deep learning. And, deep learning's got a lot of press recently because of OpenAI's success and Google's success with deep learning. But we haven't talked as much about how it's being applied more deeply into marketing. And our guest today will take us into how he's applying deep learning and why it lets him solve the problems of what you just said of right message, the right person at the right time. But instead of doing those discreetly and separately, which is what's been happening a lot in the internet over the years, the ability to do that holistically and all together at once.
So it's with my personal great excitement. Jeremy, is that right? Personal great excitement?
I hope so.
Yeah, we hope so. Jeremy and I used to work together many years ago. In fact, Jeremy, I think we hired you for your first job out of the university, right?
Out of business school.
Out of business school. Okay. So listen, for the listener, just in case, Jeremy Fain here is the CEO, co-founder of Cognitiv. You've been doing it 10 years, I think, Jeremy. So
almost 10.
You're kind of you're like the leader in trying to figure out how to make all this stuff work.
I'm an OG in AI, I think they say.
There we go. Well, good. I'm sure you and Rex will have some fun. So, listen, at a high level, why don't you kind of give sort of the audience, listener here, an orientation at kind of what Cognitiv does and what you set out, maybe what you set out to accomplish, and if you
Sure.
some modification, maybe what you're doing now and how to do that because the technology's changed.
Yeah, so we started Cognitiv in 2015, which seems like ancient times from an AI perspective. And it really is. It really was the beginning of what we now call deep learning and, frankly, what's become synonymous with AI. So in 2015, it was the first year that what's now become deep learning algorithm had the ability to beat a human in identifying images. There's this famous old machine learning competition called ImageNet out of Stanford, I believe. And over the years, computers were doing terribly. They were getting like 70% of the images right. And then human, I think, can get 90+% of the images correct. Like, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a apple, things like that. And then all of a sudden in 2015, deep learning beat that goal. And that's when you saw an explosion of self-driving car technology, a lot of talk about AI. It was also starting to being used in Siri and Alexa, and those types of things are starting to get better and better. So deep learning was the technology driving all those things, but it wasn't an everyday discussion. And frankly, AI up until 2015, I think we all can agree, was a little bit of a sideshow joke that everyone said they had and didn't really work and live up to expectations. Fast forward to 2024, I think we can all agree that I don't think anybody says that anymore. I think AI is astounding us on a daily basis, and the leaps and bounds of improvement in just the Gen AI, which is like the ChatGPT type stuff, the image creation, that we're physically seeing every day improve. So over the last 9-10 years, deep learning hasn't grown and improved, and so has Cognitiv. So we started Cognitiv 2015 with the idea that this deep learning technology would be the best technology out there to predict consumer behavior. Okay, so taking deep learning and applying it to advertising and marketing. That was our goal. That is still our goal. That's still our remit. Over that time, we've created what's now called a deep learning advertising platform. So it has a foundational technology that is data agnostic. We take first-party data in, and out pops an algorithm that can solve whatever question we want to ask it for that advertiser. Generally speaking, that is, find me more sales, or get better exposure for an ad. But more advanced advertisers are using it for things like find me incremental net new customers. We can even do find me incremental net new customers that are high LTV. Okay? And the algorithms are very custom to each advertiser's KPI, and need. Excuse me. That's sort of the fundamental of what we do. We have a number of other products, but in the end, what we are is a platform that can take first-party data signals. We have our own data assets, our own what we call data spine, our own features, our own embeddings, all these things that data scientists know and understand. And we can answer a question that a client wants, an advertiser or marketer wants. And we do that programmatically, generally speaking. So we have a DSP, we have integrations with SSPs for supply curation. We have a contextual tool that uses large language models. So there's a lot of things there to unpack, but I'm sure we can focus on whatever you want.
Yeah, this is interesting to unpack because there's obviously a lot there. The transition that I saw was from fairly shallow machine learning, which would be trying to do something like I have a goal, like you said, sales, and I want to take that goal and I want to look at the features that predict it, like what time of day it is, what website someone's on, etc. And that might be, really just a little bit more than a linear regression type, or with what you're doing, you're talking about deep learning. So I suspect you have many, many different more layers than a typical shallow machine learning. Talk to me about what's in those layers, or what it's doing, and how all the pieces come together, and what really makes that deep learning.
Yeah, sure. So for folks who don't really understand why it's called deep learning or how it works,
explain that to people.
Yeah,
I think it's worth it. Yeah.
It's really deep learning is synonymous with, let's say, a deep neural network. Okay, neural networks being what our brains are, right? Where our brains are networks of neurons. And without getting too much into it, basically, we found a way to create artificial neural networks in computers. Generally, they're run on specialized hardware. That's why NVIDIA is so rich these days. They created chips that really work well with deep learning and neural networks. And then deep learning is the process at which we train these deep neural networks to work. And they're called deep because they have layers, as Rex said. So there's multiple layers. Large language models are very deep. They're very big. They have a lot of neurons. They have a lot of connections. They have a lot of layers. So from the input to the output, there's a lot of layers in there. And they're all interconnected, and there's different neurons. Like one layer could have 100 neurons. One layer could have 5 neurons, et cetera, just like a brain might. And that's really what Rex is getting at with these layers and how deep and how shallow things are. one last scientific thing, logistic regression is a single layer, quote unquote, neural network. A deep neural network has multiple layers. So in this case, generally speaking, more is better, bigger is better. So we used to only have logistic regression, and now we got lots of layers, so it's better.
But Jeremy, take that and break that down to sort of go back to the level of sort of a marketer who has no knowledge of deep learning, doesn't even want to care, maybe doesn't need to understand it. Like, what's the advantage? What's the benefits here?
Sure.
Maybe do a little bit of a sales thing for people to sort of really get how they would apply some of this.
Right. So the reality is, deep learning is really good with a lot of data. It needs a lot of data, which is why only recently has it, in technology terms, has it become popular, because the internet was created, frankly. And that is really one of the key things that we needed for deep learning models to become real. Because internet is a repository of lots of data, lots of images, lots of text, lots of everything, files of anything and everything. And so that has become a lot of the inputs of the chat GPTs, the GPT models and things like that, because we have all this data now. So, but a lot of marketers also have a lot of data. And one of the reasons we wanted to apply deep learning to advertising was because programmatically, there's tons of data. I mean, right now, we could listen to more, but we're listening to 2 million bid requests a second in the United States alone. That's just the United States. Okay, and I would say that's a medium-sized DSP. I'm sure Trade Desk listens to a lot more than that across a lot of different channels. But just for us, 2 million ad opportunities a second that I can fill, okay? Understanding where is that coming from? How many impressions are coming from this page or this domain or from these users, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of information out there for an advertiser to understand. And then all the people that are coming to their websites and buying things, all of that is data. So all of that being put together can really
But Jeremy, is it
drive
really just
deep learning.
It's just about improving performance? That's the fundamental gain here, right? And then are you guys able to? Well, no, you're shaking your head. No, okay.
There's always a better mousetrap in our industry, right? And so, from an execution layer perspective, I would say that Cognitiv is definitely a performance advertising better mousetrap. Okay. All right. So why is that important? Well, I think that we can all agree that customer acquisition costs have only gone up. They're not going down. Okay. That is something that is a challenge that deep learning can solve for a number of reasons. Deep learning is very, very nuanced. Instead of having 5 or 10 features or variables that you're looking at from a marketing perspective, it can have thousands of inputs.
But right, and I get that, but nobody says, "Hey, give me something that's more complex." So what's the gain? I mean, do we know what is the gain of deep learning versus non-deep learning? I mean, it's an overly simplified view of the question. Do you know, Rex? You don't know from your work, do you?
No, but I do think the line of question is important, which is, I think what Jeremy's getting at is that there's more features, and that's the data science term, but. A feature might be, what time of day somebody sees an ad, what device they're on, what website they're on, what the website's about, the context. And there's a lot of ways that you can expand. I think the more features you have, that's the more opportunities for the AI to find something that's more valuable versus less valuable. If you think about ranking all the things that you know about a moment in time and a consumer and a place that they're at. So I see the direction that Jeremy's pointing at, which is, hey, if we can get a lot more features in these systems and we can train them on with more layers, deeper learning, then we can unlock more value. I mean, ultimately, that's how Google was able to beat the best players in Go, was they had a deep learning network that found all kinds of nuanced ways of which to play the game that humans had never played the game. So by analogy, you're finding new ways that a marketer can play the game and find the right consumer and so forth. But I think to Greg's point, have you have you done side by side where you've turned your, the deep learning on versus a more of a shallow network and seen the difference in performance and lift and incrementality?
Absolutely. But let me bring it back to the basics, right, of marketing, right? We talk about this a lot. When I was at Digitas a million years ago, our mantra was the right message to the right person at the right time in the right place, right? We've heard it forever. That is the goal of marketing. That is the goal of advertising, okay? And as we all know, you need 4 different companies to solve those questions right now. You need a contextual for a place. You need an audience for an audience. You need like a DSP to do pacing. You need, all this stuff. And it's all disjointed, okay? Deep learning is able to answer all those questions on an impression level basis, okay? That is where you see a hyper efficiency above and beyond a logistic regression, trees, whatever. And we do see it can be as little as 30% improvement. It can be hundreds and hundreds of percent improvement on efficiency and effectiveness, okay? So why? Why is that? Who buys Mustang Fords? Who do you think buys Mustang Fords?
Well, I don't know. I'd look at the data. I think before I answer the question.
What do you think?
It's males in midlife crisis,
males,
maybe,
right?
who don't have enough money to buy a Ferrari.
And I'm pretty sure Ford would say the major portion of buyers of Mustangs are men in sort of middle age, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you grew up with a Mustang like I
Right.
did as a racing car.
But is
right?
that 100% of their buyers? No.
No,
No.
of course not.
Okay. There's a million different clusters in there that they would like to be targeting, but do not because they don't have the tool set to do that. Deep learning is enabling sort of unlimited clustering, okay, impression by impression, where we're taking 1,000 different inputs. Demographic inputs, that's sort of table stakes. But we actually understand the user journey. We understand who's buying Mustangs, not just the men, all of them.
But Jeremy, so what you're doing is you're opening up inventory for publishers then in the way that you position that. But why is that a marketer benefit? And by the way, marketers aren't about right message and the right consumer. They're really about a return on ad spend, by the way, just to be clear.
Of course.
They should be focused on growth of the business. It's a more complicated question. But so does, and listen, just opening up more inventory for publishers is a very good sort of thing to be had. I don't disagree with that as a thesis, but do we know sort of the benefit of deep learning for marketers yet?
No. So maybe I misspoke. Let's just take our DSP.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to find more net new incremental customers.
Yeah.
We will take X amount of dollars and find them more efficiently with less waste because we will more precisely target every single impression.
Yep.
Okay. Think about an audience buy. You buy an audience no matter where they are. Okay. That's a lot of waste, because they're in context in the place where the right message is not the right place, okay? Might be the right person, not the right place. Might not even be the right time, okay? You have to have all those pieces. Now, in this place, this person is the right person. In this person, in this place is the right place. But those two things are different questions and different answers, right? The right person can change depending upon the place, and the right place can change depending upon a person. Okay. But those things are not being answered at the same time. We call it a unified auction theory. So that's what we do in the DSP. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think so. I want to drill down on a couple of items because it is interesting, the idea of unifying these different decisions to happen simultaneously, because that just seems like that would produce a better answer. One of the challenges with deep learning is that it's slow. I mean, it's you're having to make decisions on bid within like less than 100 milliseconds, right? I mean, so how do you take the model that you're building and get it to perform in that millisecond decisioning that you have to do? What's the way in which you simplify it?
Well, that's a trade secret. All I can say is that we solved that problem.
You can share it with us, Jeremy. Just here, it's just us. It's
No,
just
I think
you know,
that was one of the early engineering successes that we had was, and that is 9 years ago what we heard. Oh, they're slow, they're big, they're expensive. You need to run them on GPUs, all these things. We solved all those problems early on, and before we even built our own DSP, we were integrated with beeswax. And if you know how beeswax worked, we had to be even faster than normal if we owned our own pipes. So we had to solve that problem very early on, and we've been running that for 9 years. So it's fast the way we do it, and been very effective. Now, our networks don't have to be as large language model networks. That's, I'll say that, but we've learned how to use the engineering resources correctly.
Okay, well, I don't think I'm going to get the answer that I was looking for, whether you're doing something offline and whether it's truly, real-time decisioning or
It's
or
definitely
whether
real-time
it's something-
decisioning. We are running models in real time on a bid request.
Okay, so then the second part there is you've got this idea of increasing marketing performance, which is really important. You're unlocking more incrementality. One of the things that's always surprises, especially non-marketers, is when they look at our conversion rate. We talk about being right, like on the Ford Mustang example you used. Maybe you get 1 in 2,000 people who decide to request a test drive, if that's your KPI, or visit the dealer showroom. First of all, how much do you said you see an increase of sometimes 30%, sometimes hundreds of percent, but we're still this place where most of the people that see our ads don't take the action we want them to take. Have you done a longitudinal analysis to see how much you're improving the results, or how much we're becoming more relevant, and how much we really are getting the right message in front of the right person at the right time so they take the action we expect them to take? Or are we still down in this, we're maybe right 1 in 1,000 times, and if we can be right 2 in 1,000 times, we've increased our ROI a tremendous amount?
Well, that is the lucky thing about advertising, is that you can just go from 1 to 2% and be very successful. But
I think he's damn. I think Rex. He just made fun of us. I think is what he just did there.
No, but in all seriousness,
that is advertising.
He's right.
In all seriousness, we look at it a little. We have not done that analysis. Let me just say that, because each advertiser has a different KPI and a different way of looking at things. And I think that's one of the bigger problems we have in marketing, is that we still have people doing cost per click or last click attribution, things that have no scientific.
Jeremy, don't say that to Rex and I. It just gives us the heebie-jeebies. Okay, come on. Yeah, it's too hard to hear. I'm going to have to tune it out.
We don't work with those KPIs. Let's just say that. We really need. So we're an automated solution. The whole point of us is that we have a platform that takes in these first-party labels, like who is buying Mustangs, who's walking onto a lot, who's walking to 7-Eleven, who's buying Nike shoes, whatever, and we say, okay, we want to sell more Nike shoes, or we want more people to come in, or we want incremental net new people, and out pops an algorithm, we start buying, etc. But it's not just about improvement. It's actually, in our business, it's about consistency over time and improvement of that consistency over time. And that's another advantage of deep learning algorithms, because they're self-learning and self-organizing to a certain extent, right? They learn, and we get back to this idea of what is a neural network? Oh, what is a deep learning? It's a neural network, right? As kids, we learn, we get tested, we're wrong. Hopefully we learn the right answer, we get tested again, and we get better. That is a deep learning algorithm, which is why our solutions are scalable and consistent over time, which makes us either a number 1 or a number 2 partner no matter what throughout. Whereas the number 1 partner, if we're number 2, may change every month. But we're always going to be consistent in our returns, which is also valuable.
Hey, Jeremy, just maybe clarify something. Who are you selling to most? Marketer, DSP, publisher?
Agencies.
Who do you guys sell?
Agencies.
You sell to the agencies. Okay.
Yeah.
So the agencies are executing this. They're put in as an overlay to maybe a DSP, although you've got a DSP type solution too, I guess.
Right.
But they're generally, and who are they connecting? Who are they using you in, in a trade desk or something, or
could
or
be trade.
Teads?
They can use our curation product and our context product, and any DSP that accepts deal IDs.
Okay, and their intention, the agency's intention, is obviously to improve the performance of the advertising, the marketing that they're doing on behalf of the client, right? On behalf of the brand. I mean,
Hopefully.
I'm stating the obvious.
Hopefully.
Okay. Huh. Hey, Jeremy, I'm going to ask you another funny question. Who buys you eventually? Who buys Cognitiv?
I think there's a number of strategic partnerships that are viable for us. I mean, look, think about us as an engine, as a data science and deep learning engine. There's a lot of companies out there that could use that.
So does an agency chooses to buy you? Maybe. To your point,
I
they
think
install
that
and
if
everything?
agencies continue, if they continue to double down on technology, owning technology, then yes,
Okay.
of course that would make sense.
Okay. Or a DSP buys you, right? Obviously, right? No?
Well,
No, they have it themselves.
It depends on the DSP. There's older DSPs. And then there's Trade Desk and TV360. So on the agency side, just a quick example of an idea, right? So a lot of people have data sets. They have data, right? The agencies have been buying data companies like Axiom, Epsilon, et cetera.
Yep.
Merkle, et cetera.
Yes, they have. Yep.
But they don't necessarily have how to activate that data effectively.
I've noticed that. Yep.
So we have a data activation. That is what we have, a data activation platform, right? You take that data, out comes an activation capability. And I think that's a big translation moment for the industry, is because we're moving from, hey, here's an audience, to, okay, here's the impression that audience needs to be bought on.
Yeah. So Jeremy, listen, I can't tell from listening to you about all that it's doing right now. I remember, so back when we were at the IAB, I remember I went to the heads of the behavioral targeting companies, and I said, hey, what if we were to improve the categorization of what you put in? We standardized like auto intenders, because they were all selling auto intenders, and you come up with a variety of other things they were selling. And to a person, they said, nah, we don't want to standardize to talk about what we're doing. Now, I think what was going on is that they were lying. They were basically, their systems were imperfect. They weren't doing a very good job. They probably couldn't, how they defined an auto intender, who knew? They probably threw a bunch of other shit in there just to be able to sell stuff. Is that what you're cleaning up?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that we are able to give the marketer what they want. If they want a list of quote unquote standardized categories, which actually we're not seeing a lot of demand for. And in fact, especially in the context case, you're just not seeing a ton of asks for, hey, I just need a sports, give me sports.
Yeah, okay.
They're
nobody's buying content themes anymore.
They want.
Right. Well, auto intenders is a behavioral target rather than
Auto
sports.
intenders, I would say is still a valuable audience, but really Ford wants people who are intending to buy Ford or could be conquested into Ford. And that's different. Those people might be different from Chevy, from Hyundai, from whatever. And so the way that we talk about it is we still are meeting with our clients and being given a brief of, hey, we're looking for males 18 to 39 and they should have these backgrounds. And we say to them, hey, don't you just want people who are going to buy your product? Let the algorithm figure that out. And then we can give you insights and personas on who's actually doing it and what the algorithm is seeing. And then you can use that to create your TV spots and things like that.
Hey, Rex, I'll let you in here for a second. I just I'm pursuing a theme here for a bunch of things, probably around movable middles and stuff. Hey, Jeremy, are really agencies and/or buyers coming to you or suggesting that they want to buy demographic audiences?
I think it's more of an overlay on something else.
What do you mean?
It's like, this is our goal, but we want you to buy men or males 18 to 35, or that's our target. We want you to get more and more of those. We don't care how you do it, but that's really what we're looking at.
Okay, so they say, I have a transactional goal that I want you to aim against, so you're doing analytics against the thing to understand where the best performance is. And then they're saying, but can you make that more male than female, or vice versa, whatever. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Let's go with that.
I don't know. He was committed to that. I mean, the reason I ask is because I'm kind of shocked if anybody's still using demographics today. It happens to be the dumbest targeting I think I've ever seen. And by the way, that's not just idle. We've now proven it. Like, it has no relationship to business value. Demographics are almost as bad as click-through, it seems. It's early.
We don't think last click attribution or even last touch attribution is very indicative of what's going on, but we see that very often. And I, my explanation for that is it's easy. It's easy. And a lot of people need easy because they're spending a lot of money, and it's...
I don't think that would be in line with shareholder responsibility, by the way. So I would disagree with your accepting the unacceptable.
I mean, look, I was very surprised when we went to one of the largest marketers in the world, and we did a big offsite there. We decoded AI for them.
Yep.
And they told us, we asked them, okay, what are your KPIs? What do you really focus on? They're like, well, we spend money and we get sales. I mean, literally, they're like, we don't have KPIs.
Ouch.
Well, I guess sales would be the KPI in that case, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but they have no idea.
But he wasn't attributing to it, is what I think he's
right.
saying.
And then on the other side of that, we have one of our largest partners. They only invest more money in marketing if we can prove that we have incremental LTV lift.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, every dollar they spend has some return, and we prove that, and they give us more money, or less money, but generally more money. So there's a spectrum of big marketers out there. I would love for all the big marketers out there to focus only on incrementality, but I think there's a mental problem. Like, cost per acquisition is $10, incremental cost per acquisition is $100, and they're like, oh, whoa, $100. But really, that's where all the money's going right now.
That's where they should be aiming for anyway, regardless, right? Rex, what do you got for tech questions to ask Jeremy about what he's doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll probably in this show get into how it works. I think you're protective of your IPN. I get that, but I do. I have questions about when you have how many features you have, what kind of features you're using,
we can talk about
why that works better. I think on the multi-touch part, the challenge is that if you really talk about multi-touch and you're only talking about digital, then you also are still leaving the touches out that might happen in broadcast, or might happen when someone drives by an out-of-home ad, or the email that they get from the marketer, or the direct mail piece that they get, or whatever. Are you truly completely holistic for every single touch point, from paid, owned, or earned, or are you just digital?
We're just programmatic, okay? But let's talk about that. Let's get into that, especially from an incrementality perspective, okay?
Yeah.
So to do true incrementality, we believe you have to do randomized control testing, okay?
Yeah, and that becomes a solution if you don't have a holistic view, because the control group absorbs all of the other media and exposure that you're not measuring.
Exactly, and that is, frankly, anybody that's asking us for anything other than incrementality is not that worried, Rex, about the things that you just talked about. The people people who are very serious about their ad dollars and how they spend them should be asking, okay, and being willing to spend on randomized control tests. And that is one of the things that our DSP is natively set up to do.
So your randomized control test effectively provides the baseline learning for the deep learning. Is that being used as the counterfactual, as the kind of learning place where the AI can look and say, well, what happens if we didn't advertise?
Exactly. So the way we do it is there's a number of reasons why we don't use ghost ads. Okay, so first of all, our advertisers generally need to check our homework, right? And so we'll be serving their double-click tags, and so they want to see what was exposed, what the difference, and just to actually look at the A/B test and see if the A/B group looks relatively the same, which it's supposed to look like, right? It's supposed to be similar. And exposures should be similar, frequencies should be similar, all those things, right? And so they want to check our homework, so they need, in order to do that, they need to buy PSAs. And it could be, depending upon the spend, it could be 1%, it could be 10%, sometimes it's 50% to start. Because you need what's called an explore phase, okay? So we don't know who's incremental at the beginning, okay? We need data on that. And so when we begin, and this is not like news. I mean, this is how you're supposed to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
The
This is,
explore versus exploit,
yeah,
or
so
the
we,
earning
right.
versus
So
the
we
or learning versus earning.
we
Yeah,
randomly buy impressions, sites, people, times, etc. We expose randomly PSAs, randomly ads for the client, and we gather data on that. So people that see the PSA that convert are generally thought of as non-incremental because they would have done it without an ad. And then the opposite is they might be incremental if we showed them an ad and they converted, okay? We explore, depends on the client, how big the data is. It could take a week, could take 2 weeks, could take a month, etc. Then we start exploiting. We train the models, we exploit, which means that we target only people we think are incremental. But from there, we have the control group of the PSA. And our goal is that when we show them the PSA, they do not convert, right? Because that means that they needed the ad to convert. And we're constantly taking that data and what's called back propagating that into the algorithm, and it's constantly evolving and learning. So from the longer you run these, the more data you have, the better they get, which is the opposite of most ad tech solutions. These get better and scale better over time, rather than lose their efficacy.
Yeah, that's great. And so when you're doing the back propagation and you're feeding both the PSA, and as you mentioned before, it could be 1%, it could be 10%, it could be some depends on how much, I guess, how many conversions you need
That's
to
right.
be able to learn
Exactly.
from it.
Exactly.
Then what do you do? Do you worry much about contamination? Like, the problem is that people have multiple devices. So if you're delivering in the open web, the person might convert on their laptop, or they might start on an OTV watching something on, streaming service, and then shift, I guess, in the streaming service and switch over to a mobile device. That might, how does that? Do you have an identity graph to where you have everybody mapped so you can keep the groups separate, or how does that work?
Great question. We use LiveRamp. So we have ramp IDs for our cross-device graph. We, of course, we want the cleanest data, so we need the most deterministic data. And right now, we've done a lot of testing of a lot of IDs, and right now we use LiveRamp for that cross-device. Now, the interesting thing about the industry is that none of the other DSPs, in my experience, offer cross-device for free. You got to pay more, and most people don't. And so they're not even doing cross-device. They're not even doing cross-device with their last touch or last click. I mean, which has actually been a problem for us to a certain extent, because you can't compare us to other vendors. So our results are cross-device, but other vendors are not. And you have to be willing to look at that data in a different way. We could dupe it. We have already deduped it. We could redupe it, and we do that sometimes. But then you sort of feel sad when you have to.
No, you better have the proper.
You sort of feel
measurement, even if other
sad
people
when you
aren't
have to
following
redupe it,
Yeah.
because we've done it what we think is the best way. But
Yeah. I mean, it's good that you're using randomized control as an ongoing training for to feedback. I mean, I do think. I mean, I know we're getting towards the end of the show here today, but I do think it will be valuable for you to begin to build an overall benchmark or some norms so that we can, because some of the questions Greg were asking, I think, is what is on marketers' mind, which is, how do I know if this works? I mean, it's really complicated. You have proprietary technology. We're not necessarily getting inside the black box, but we can look at the outside of what it produces. And especially since you have randomized control tests, and especially since you're using an identity graph like LiveRamp in this case, you have the ingredients to be able to look at the big picture and say, we can do a bake-off and compare this versus the other solutions. But it is. I think it's important for the listeners to appreciate that where the transition that you really represent, which is from these really shallow networks that are just trying to optimize a single thing at a time, and something that's much more holistic and deeper, and the opportunity that represents.
And I would also say, just to close out deep learning and why it's important, for doing continuous dynamic randomized control testing forever. We do it forever. We don't do it dipsticking like we did it for a month and then wait 2 months to see if it worked. No, it's constant and continuous, and really deep learning because of backpropagation, which is basically you test it, it learns, you test it, it learns. Constant relearning is really, in our opinion, the only way to do true constant incrementality lift campaigns.
Jeremy, I can totally get that, and I agree. I think it'd be interesting to know how important it is to lean into. Like, Rex had brought us a methodology around doing AI personalization. It's kind of dynamic creative optimization, DCO on steroids, right? And we've now run close to 10 studies, Rex, right? Something like that?
Yeah.
And we have found, on average, the performance boost, A/B test split versus what they're doing now, plus 150%. I mean, Jeremy, we've all been around long enough. I have never in my life seen plus 150% on average across 10 studies. So, I mean, it's performance that's insane, and it's all driven by a special AI technique that Rex had worked on with this other company. So that's what I'd want to get. That'd be really interesting. And we make it the biggest deal in the world.
I could talk a little bit about how we do that, Rex, actually, and we can talk about it. So generally speaking, the black box of the algorithm has inputs, and then it has one output, right? Excuse me. It's basically buy or not buy. It's a prediction, but it's like, over a certain threshold, we buy it. For our more advanced clients, we actually do creative optimization, not dynamic creative optimization, but creative optimization. So we will get, let's say, 20 creatives, and we will have an explore phase, and then we will exploit. And at the outputs for X are 20 outputs. Okay, so we score every single creative against every single impression, and we choose the most likely to add conversion to that impression, and then we buy. Okay, on top of all the gains that we already see, we have done this study, and hopefully someday the advertisers will allow us to do a public case study on it. We see 30 to 50% improvement. Using just that piece of it on top of all the deep learning, so it's also another big improvement. But so
Creative
we agree.
Matters, yeah.
We
all
agree.
These pieces matter.
We agree.
Jeremy,
Yeah,
I would
that's
do
good.
that study. I would do that study, and I guarantee you, I will make the information public.
Let's do it. Let's
I mean,
partner.
we did
have
XMOS. We did XMOS at IAB.
Yeah.
Rex and I did 24 studies there. I've done SMOCs here, which is the same
I know,
damn
you're the
thing.
king
but
of
it was
studies, Greg.
It's
You're the
king
king
of
of
He's the
public
king of
studies.
studies.
And I've never king of studies. I don't know what that means, but
That's how you move the industry forward, Greg.
I've never failed to take
you
one
gotta
study
prove
public
it,
ever,
right?
ever. Yeah.
Well, what about
keep
that one with
proving it.
Spielberg? We had a problem with that one. That was
Well,
hard.
Universal is a pain in the ass until I told him to go ahead. Remember, I told him to go ahead and sue me anyway. He threatened to sue us. I said, "Sue me anyway." I said, "I'd love the public attention."
Okay, and on that note, I know we're at the show's conclusion.
Well, wait. Here, before Rex wraps it up, hey,
and I have
Jeremy,
to go-
I do want to say thank you. I mean, I appreciate you doing
Yeah,
this. And
thank
listen, I'm
you.
a big fan of yours. I loved when I worked with you and stuff. It's. I think
Same
I'll
here,
just say this:
ditto.
the most exciting thing to watch, the longer you're in business, is to see those you've worked with before do well. So listen, I looked up the company here. You got funding. You got 100 and some odd employees. You guys are growing. I mean, it's all good. So, congratulations, really. Rex is an entrepreneur. I just started and sold a
Thank you very
business.
much.
Like, we have big appreciation for that. So
Look,
good for you.
Everything I learned about the internet, I learned under your tutelage, Craig. So thank you very much.
Well, then they probably had to relearn from something
Well,
I
then
was
that
talking
was-
about, but that was fine.
That's called
That was-
coincidence.
Hey, we fixed the internet, Craig. We fixed the internet. Remember
fixed
when
the internet.
Remember when
That's
there
right.
was
Correlation is not causation. Let's just
Remember
be
when
clear
there
on
was
that note here.
Rex,
And
I
on
think
that
we need
note,
Rex to take us out at this
we
point.
had 300 ad
And that's-
sizes.
300. I remember that. It was insane, right? Microsoft calls it 900 ad units. Jeremy got that
Yeah.
fixed.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay.
well, that's it for this episode of Decoding AI for Marketing. I'm Rex Briggs.
And I'm Greg Stewart.
Be sure to catch all our episodes, plus subscribe, follow, rate, and review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can get transcripts and more information on our website, decodingaiformarketing.com, and learn more about MMA membership options. Go to MMAglobal.com. Thanks for listening.